Patriot Front 2.0.
Mr. Reagan.
So there is a new Patriot Front group in town, and they're even more fake than fake Patriot Front. So if you guys don't remember, a few years back, this group called Patriot Front started marching around various places in America claiming to be conservative patriots and causing a scene. They were labeled by the media as right-wing champions of Caucasian superiority. Now, I'm making an effort to avoid the trigger words on YouTube that might get this video censored, but you guys should be able to decode that cryptic message there, I think. Anyway, the media claimed that this Patriot Front group was right-wing champions of Caucasian superiority, and yet they were very obviously fake. They were immediately identified by conservatives such as myself as disguised agents of the federal government, executing an operation to psychologically trick the American people. The goal of this trick was to convince Americans that right-wing champions of Caucasian superiority were still prominent here in America. This, of course, is not true, but that's what they wanted people to believe. And now there is a new fake group. And this fake group is even more outrageous than the original group. And they are really trying to make conservatives look bad. This group is called Blood Tribe, and they don't just carry American flags, they actually carry 1930s German flags. Now, just like with Patriot Front, this group was immediately clocked by conservatives as being fake.
Any of you guys federal informants?
No.
No? Not a single one of you?
Absolutely not.
None of you do any snitching?
And honestly, it's pretty laughable. But maybe we shouldn't be laughing, because as ridiculous as this group is, what they're doing is actually very dangerous. I will explain in one moment. First, I have to sell you something. The US dollar has lost 85% of its value since the 1970s, when the dollar decoupled from gold. And the government seems bent on continuing this tradition. From now until the next election, the government can print as much money as they want. The last time they did that, inflation went up 9%. This means one thing: the security of your future and your family's future, it's all in your hands. Make sure you freeze the value of the wealth that you are holding. Invest in gold with Noble Gold Investments. Gold is the one asset that is proven to withstand recession, inflation, and just about all economic threats. Noble Gold Investments is here to help you if you want to invest in gold. You will also get a 24-karat 1/4 ounce gold standard coin for free. Go to noblegoldinvestments.com right now, noblegoldinvestments.com, or simply call 1-877-646-5347, the only gold company that I trust. The problem, as I see it, with Patriot Front and now this Blood Tribe group, and I presume there will be other government-organized fake groups just like these, is that they don't really push the race stuff very much. They express primarily pretty standard conservative ideas. Now, certainly they have more radical race stuff on their websites and social media accounts, and that stuff's often difficult to find. I looked through Patriot Front's website. It was very difficult to find the racially, divisive stuff, but it was there. But their most vocal expressions are things that basically all conservatives would say. Like, these guys are saying that pedophilia is bad. I mean, that's a very mainstream conservative idea, and most Democrats would also agree with this. And yet this group dresses in this like quasi-militant way, and they carry guns and 1930s German flags, stuff like that. And so typical uninformed centrist Americans, they're going to be like, "Whoa, these guys are scary." Their views are the same as conservatives, regular conservatives I see on TV and on YouTube. And so these guys, regular Americans, they're going to make that association. These guys have the same views as conservatives. They're scary. Conservatives are scary. It's a pretty simple tactic, and unfortunately, I fear that it's going to be very effective. Now, I don't know if these guys are actually federal agents or not. The federal agent theory is, that groups like this are created in order to attract really, truly extreme right-wing nut jobs. And, it's basically an entrapment operation. And this is a totally legitimate theory. In fact, I think it's an extremely likely theory. However, I also think it's possible that these folks are being organized by a private party. The Lincoln Project, if you remember, organized just such a group in order to falsely connect the candidate Glenn Youngkin with extremists.
And the viral campaign hoax that everyone is talking about will probably hurt McAuliffe. The disgraced Lincoln Project, which has spent more than $250,000 on anti-Youngkin efforts, is now admitting that it orchestrated this stunt, sending this group to stand outside a Youngkin bus to pose as white supremacists with tiki torches.
And look, I think there are lots of anti-conservative groups who would love to execute these kinds of hoaxes. And there are plenty of wealthy degenerates willing to fund such an operation. So I'm not fully convinced that this is a government operation, but even if it's a privately organized hoax group, they're probably in contact with federal agents in order to entrap the guys who genuinely hold the more extreme views that these groups espouse. And if you're not already 100% convinced that these groups are leftists posing as right-wing champions of Caucasian superiority, then consider for a moment the khakis. Back when the Patriot Front group first appeared, everybody in right-wing media, everybody on right-wing YouTube, we all immediately homed in on the khakis because this is like the standard apparel for certain federal agencies. And several popular memes expressed this sentiment. If you're going to try to trick people, maybe at least change the uniform. And although this isn't solid evidence, it's a pretty funny criticism. But this is how you know that these new folks, Blood Tribe, that these folks are definitely not conservatives because they're still sticking with the khakis. Because this tells me one of two things. Either they've heard the criticism, the ridicule over the khakis, and they don't mind people thinking that they're federal agents in disguise, or they haven't heard the criticism at all. Now, the first explanation makes no sense. A genuine group of extremists like this would never want people suspecting that they're federal agents. They need people to trust them. So I think, and this is a kind of speculative theory, but I think it's right, I think that these guys are all leftists and they're so fixed in their leftist ideology that they haven't even watched the conservative reports about Patriot Front, and they haven't actually even heard the criticism about the khakis. And so they're still wearing the khakis thinking, oh, conservatives are going to think that we're a legitimate group of extremists. No, we don't think that you're a legitimate group of extremists. If you're going to try to trick us, again, at least change the uniform. But what's funny about this, like I said before, they need people to trust them. So actually, this entire aggressive display is irrational and counterproductive. I don't think any genuine group of extremists would do something like this because they know it scares the crap out of people. And just to check, because I had this theory that I don't think actual extremists would be like this, I went to the website stormfront.org. This is like a supremacy, whatever, website. And I wanted to see what the people who sincerely hold these views think about Patriot Front and this new group, Blood Tribe. Now, of Patriot Front, the comments were things like, they are almost certainly feds. And for those of you who aren't feds, keep performing the literature distributions. Thanks for your contribution. And their name is Patriot Front. Front equals fake or a false facade or fake patriots. And then about Blood Tribe, these folks wrote, looks like more unlawful government alphabet soup gang orchestrated BS. Also, something rotten in the state of Denmark. And it's got to be staged. Also, somebody wrote, Antifa with different costumes, whether they be feds, frauds, or fools. This seems like a good group to stay away from. So and I looked pretty carefully through this site, searching through these forums and stuff to try to figure out what people thought of this group. And even if somebody had something like vaguely nice to say about them or said, don't assume that these people are feds. Maybe they, they're just idiots or something like that. There was nobody who knew anybody in these groups. There was nobody that was like, oh, I've checked these groups out. I've been to their meetings, whatever. Yeah, they're totally legit. Nobody actually seemed to have any firsthand knowledge of these groups. You'd think that at least somebody on that website would have some connection to one of these groups, but nobody seemed to know anything about them. And everything on there was speculation. So from the people who actually talk about this extremism stuff, this supremacy or whatever, however people want to classify it, they don't seem to have any kind of connection with these groups. So these groups are their own thing, and I think pretty obviously phony. But as I said, a lot of low information centrist American voters will be fooled by this stuff. And because of that, it is dangerous. We do not need mainstream conservative views like pedophilia is bad associated with fake racial extremist lunatics. And so we need to fight back against these folks. We need true patriots confronting them. And that actually happened I think like a couple weeks ago. Now, I can't show the full video here because I will get demonetized, but basically these patriots identified fake Antifa / federal agents, whatever they are, informants, I don't know. But they identified these Patriot Front fake patriots, and they went over to them and they pulled their masks off. They actually like ripped their masks off their faces. You know, they wear those like, I don't know what they call them, neck gaiters or whatever. Like Patriot Front always wears like the neck gaiters. So they start pulling these off and like videoing their faces. And I thought this was just great, you know? Look, obviously nobody should act violently in any way ever. I could not advocate such a thing on YouTube, obviously. That would be terrible. But demasking, is demasking violence? I don't know. I don't know if I would classify that as violence personally. It's an interesting debate. Maybe that's a debate that people should have on YouTube. Is demasking physical violence? I would say no. Other people might say yes. I don't know. But certainly demasking definitely needs to be done with these folks. Now, one of these guys was supposedly identified by people on Twitter, but it was pretty clear to me that this was just made up crap. The guy was not identified accurately at all. And I suspect this was, you know, possibly like a counterintelligence thing, just throwing out a fake name. So, you know, to protect the loser who actually got demasked. Now, Patriot Front does not carry guns as far as I've ever seen, but this blood tribe does carry guns. And I actually suspect that maybe this blood tribe gun-toting thing started because of the little unmasking incident here. I mean, unmasking these fakers will be a lot scarier if they're armed, right? But still, it is something that needs to be done. Creating the illusion that conservatives are crazy extremists is an incredibly dangerous lie. The problem, of course, is that conservatives, we are not the crazy extremists that Democrats try to pretend that we are. And so they have to perform this kind of cosplay BS in order to make it look that way. And it's actually pretty funny to me that you've got the Antifa types. They're out cosplaying as civil rights protesters, pretending that America is, you know, is all bigoted and evil. And now, because they're, you know, protesting against this imaginary enemy, another faction of leftists are cosplaying as that imaginary enemy, right? So leftists are cosplaying both as the heroes and the villains now in their imaginary version of America. You know, leftists really do live in a crazy fantasy world. It's funny, but it's also incredibly sad. Well, that's it for me. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And remember, it is not that our liberal friends are ignorant. It's just they know so much that is not so. Good night.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening.